For over 40 years, in the first week of every August, this is what I do. Along with another 150,000 other people. The National Eisteddfod of Wales is the largest festival of competitive music and poetry in Europe. 8 days solid of competition and performance.
It's become something of a family tradition to pitch up at the Eisteddfod every year. And I'm going to give you an insider's guide to some of the many traditions that make up this unique event.
This year, the Eisteddfod is in Llanelli, in southwest Wales. And for 1 week, this town will become the cultural capital of Wales.
The tradition of Welsh artists coming together to compete at an Eisteddfod dates all the way back to the 12th century. Eistedd means to sit. An Eisteddfod originally meant a sitting, a session, a coming together. And even to this day, the highlight of the festival is to watch a man or a woman sitting in a very special chair.
So, parking one's posterior is one of the oldest traditions in Welsh culture. Winning the chair or being crowned in it as a prifardd or principal bard is still every poet's ambition.
Every year, a new chair is specially carved and presented as a prize to the winning poet. He or she has to write an awdl, a 250-line poem on a specific subject, and all in strict metre. And this is this year's chair. Isn't it beautiful? And as a nation looks on, a poet will be chaired.
There's even more excitement surrounding the competition this year, because last year, the judges withheld the award.
But someone did win the other main poetry prize, the Crown, and that someone was me. I won it twice now, in 2013 and in 1999. And it's an extraordinary feeling to be up there in the middle of that elaborate ceremony that you've seen so many times before. And yet, when you're in the midst of it, you start to panic, thinking, what am I supposed to do next? And so it becomes a slightly surreal experience, and yet it's a tremendous honour nonetheless.
The ceremony itself is conducted by the Gorsedd of the Bards. If you roll back the years through the ceremonies of the past, you'd think that the Gorsedd in their druidic robes have been around since time immemorial. But looks can be deceptive. Unlike the Eisteddfod, these druids are a relatively modern invention, with their roots in North London, of all places.
Welsh people have been coming to live and work in London for centuries. In our family, my great-grandfather was the first to come here from Breconshire in 1886. He worked as a draper in Oxford Street. I was born about 3 miles that way in Muswell Hill. But this is Primrose Hill, and it was here in London that the first ever Gorsedd of the Bards was convened in 1792.
It was convened by a stonemason from Glamorgan who came here to showcase what he claimed was the ancient druidic tradition of Wales. His name was Edward Williams, or to give him his preferred bardic name, Iolo Morgannwg. Rhian Medi is a London-based member of the Gorsedd of the Bards who successfully campaigned for a plaque to commemorate Iolo Morgannwg here on Primrose Hill.
He was a man full of contradictions, a chatterbox, a polymath, genius, self-taught. Probably would have been the life and soul of a party, I would imagine. He sort of put together all these jigsaws of Welsh history and created a plausible past and convinced everyone that that was the truth.
Iolo claimed that druidic tradition had been handed down from the distant past, that he was one of the 2 surviving recipients of druidic lore. But the truth of the matter is that the Gorsedd ceremonies all originated in Iolo's fertile imagination.
This is an excerpt from the Morning Chronicle's account of one of Iolo's ceremonies performed here.
Some Welsh bards resident in London assembled in Congress on Primrose Hill, according to ancient usage, which required that it should be in the eye of the public observation, in the open air, in a conspicuous place, and whilst the sun is above the horizon. The wonted ceremonies were observed. A circle of stones was formed, in the middle of which was the Maen Gorsedd, or altar, on which a naked sword being placed, all the bards assisted to sheathe it. On occasion, the bards appeared in the insignia of their various orders. There was a general interest in Druidism during the 18th century, so there was a receptive audience for Iolo's theories and ceremonies. But even if they weren't as ancient and traditional as he claimed, they have subsequently become traditional, and Iolo succeeded in creating a new Welsh institution. It might seem strange that he chose to hold his first Gorsedd here in London.
This is where it was all happening. There was nowhere in Wales. This is the capital. This is where he had to come with his ideas and his projects, and he realised this.
Iolo Morgannwg was one of the main forces behind the incredible renaissance that Welsh culture experienced during the second half of the 18th century. And as a London Welshman, I'm quite proud of the fact that many of the seminal events of that renaissance took place here in London. Later, I'll be tracking down the first ever chair that Iolo Morgannwg used at an Eisteddfod, and we'll be finding out if someone will claim this year's chair. It's not just poets that go head-to-head in an Eisteddfod. Over 6,000 people come here to compete in over 200 competitions. They come from all sorts of different backgrounds and from all over the world. Genod Gwirfai is a new choir based in Waun Fawr, a small village in Snowdonia. They number teachers, nurses, farmers' wives and council workers amongst their members. And there's an international contingent too.
I'm originally from Ohio. I come from a town called Dayton, Ohio. I went to a university called the University of Rio Grande, and that's where I met my husband, who's from Porthmadog originally. He was there on a football scholarship, and I was studying on a music scholarship, and we happened to meet each other, and the rest is history, as they say. I'd never heard of Wales before I'd met him, and here I am 12 years later, living in Wales.
Genod Gwirfai have travelled 6 hours by bus to the Eisteddfod to compete in the competition for choirs with fewer than 35 members.
For us, particularly with Genod Gwirfai, it's very social. It's about having fun and making friends and just getting together and doing something that you enjoy with the people that live in your community. So from that point of view, we don't take ourselves too seriously. But then if you're going to compete in the National Eisteddfod, you don't want to make a fool of yourself either.
It was a tough competition with 7 other choirs competing, and Genod Gwirfai just missed out on a top 3 placing.
The Eisteddfod celebrating people coming together to keep that tradition alive. Regular people with regular jobs in regular communities. It's fantastic.
And now for one of the most important ceremonies of the week, the crowning of the Bard. But the identity of the winner is shrouded in secrecy.
Only 3 people know who has won the crown this afternoon. The Eisteddfod organiser, 2 of the Gorsedd officials, and of course the winner himself or herself, if there is one. As the winner of last year's crown, I'm supposed to congratulate them on stage with a short poem. But first, I need to know who they are.
I need to find the Cofiadur, the Gorsedd's official keeper of the records.
Ah! Fi'n bosib I ni cael rhyw air bach.
Penry takes me into the inner sanctum before letting me in on the secret. There's no chance of getting a camera in there.
Diolch. I've just been tipped off by one of the senior Gorsedd officials as to the outcome of this afternoon's ceremony. I am now the 5th person in the know, but I've been sworn to secrecy, so I'm not allowed to tell you.
After a couple of hours penning some suitable verses, it's time for me to get changed into my bardic regalia. Because I've won one of the Eisteddfod's main competitions, I'm a member of the White Order.
We're making our way now to the rear of the pavilion prior to making our big entrance.
The crown is usually presented to the poet who writes the best poem in free verse. This year, the theme is Tyfu, or growth.
As well as its ceremonial role, the Orsedd also functions as a kind of Welsh honours system. All the people around me here have made some kind of contribution to Welsh public life, be that as writers, as musicians, as politicians, actors, or even sports players. So any minute now, the trumpets will sound, the organ will play, and we go over the top. It's really exciting.
Somewhere amongst the 2,000-strong audience in the pavilion, there's a poet who's about to win a crown. The Archdruid announces that there's a winner and calls on the winning poet to make himself known.
Gan yr Osgwrdd.
And there he is. There's a real buzz in the pavilion because 24-year-old Guto Dafydd is one of the youngest ever to win the crown. The pageantry of the Gorsedd continues as the Archdruid sheathes a sword above the poet's head, a symbolic call for peace, or heddwch in Welsh.
Y gwir yn erbyn y byd, a oes heddwch? Calon wrth galon, a oes heddwch?
The specially commissioned crown is made from steel, one of the major industries of this town in the past. And now it's my turn, with my tribute to the new Prifardd, or champion poet.
Mae gerddi'n llond y ceia yn mestyn am yr ucha. Un cwestiwn Guto sydd gen i. Be dyddi flwyddyn nesa?
Years ago, I was watching the ceremony on TV, and the colours, the organ music, all the splendour of it, it went right to my heart. I loved it. The other kids in school, maybe they dreamed of winning the FA Cup at Wembley. Becoming a Prifardd in that pavilion, that's what meant the world to me. Poetry in Wales doesn't live in a book. It lives on the stage in front of the microphone. Poetry is rock and roll in Wales.
One of the youngest poets for a very long time, which makes your feat here today all the more praiseworthy. Guto, llongyfarchiadau. I've just had a quick look at Guto's poems, and I have to say I'm very impressed. The poems all sing, as we say in Welsh. That's to say the The lines are all evenly weighted and euphonious. To give you an example,